Hey there, you're watching Behind the Feature, where we get straight to solving product puzzles with tips you can actually use. Let's jump right in. So, what are we going to talk about today? Ever had that moment where you realize your user research is about as reliable as Mumbai's monsoon forecast? I live in Mumbai, I know this. You're not alone. I've seen companies burn months of development time chasing features that users said they wanted, but they never used it. Today on Behind the Feature, we're diving into the 4 top sins of user research, and I'm giving you my exact playbook for fixing them. If you've ever had that gut feeling your data might be lying to you, this episode is your rescue plan. So, what is the problem landscape? One of the dry cleaning startups I worked with spent 3 months building same-day express delivery feature. Their survey showed a whooping 85% of customers very interested in this option. Launch day came and crickets. Total usage, a dismal 3%. Here's the kicker. It wasn't just bad data. It was deceptively good data. On the surface, 85% interest seems like a home run. But digging deeper, we found that the survey didn't account for the actual cost of this survey. When presented with the 2 pricing, the interest just plummeted. Today, we're covering some of my battle-tested framework for 1. Spotting bad data before it derails your product. 2. Quick fixes for research you've already done. 3. A bulletproof process for gathering reliable data moving forward. In my usual style, I'm going to first start with what are the common research disasters. First, the leading question trap. I once saw a survey ask, how much time would you like to save with a new feature? That's like asking if you want free money. Who says no to that? The fix? It's very important to please rewrite your questions to be neutral. Instead of, would you like to save time? Ask, how do you actually currently manage your task? I'll give you another very common example. Here's what a typical leading survey question will look like. How much do you love our product? With the way you phrase it, you're actually suggesting users to give you a more positive answer, even if they hate what you do. The more neutral variant of the same question will look something like this. How would you rate our product? Same question, just phrased in a very different way. We'll actually share a real story. A productivity app asked users, wouldn't you love to have AI-powered task suggestions? 95% said yes. But when they launched it, again, nobody used it. Why? Because they actually never asked how users actually prioritize tasks. The second, the false positive feedback. I'll give you an example. Beta users praise your features in interview. In reality, they're being nice because they know your team. When Ala Ghosh, a seasoned product leader, an ex-Googler, came on to the show, I'm linking it here, he often emphasized the importance of understanding the why no from your customers. However, he kind of pointed out that founders caught in the excitement of their own product often fall prey to a common phenomena, especially prevalent in India. It's called participant bias. This actually occurs when your respondents say things based on what they think you want to hear, instead of their genuine opinions. For instance, during user interviews, if you ask participants if they would buy your product, assuming you added the feature they just requested, can you guess what the answer would be? From his experience, the vast majority will say yes. Does this mean that you should rush to the engineering team and prioritize building that? I think absolutely not. The question itself is flawed. It naturally pushes people towards a response that pleases you, the founder, or the product leader. To avoid this pitfall, PMs or product marketing managers should focus on asking questions about users' past experiences. By inquiring about their past behaviors, you can actually gain insights into what users have actually done rather than what they hypothetically might do. I'll give you a simple analogy. If you ask someone on January 2nd if they'd be willing to go to the gym for 12 months in a row, they will likely say yes. But we all know that most people end up canceling their membership just after a few visits. The fix: instead of asking about future behavior, ask about the past, right? By focusing on the past behavior, you can uncover more reliable data. Instead of asking, would you use a feature to track your spending, you should actually rather ask, can you describe how you currently track your expenses? This approach provides valuable insights into the actual habits and challenges that a user faces. Number 3, the bias sampling catastrophe. Netflix is one of the biggest tech companies that has been guilty of sampling bias. People in the United States loved its recommendation algorithm as it was able to suggest shows relevant to their interests. The rest of the world, however, hated it. The suggestions were simply terrible. What was the reason behind it? Apparently, the AI model that they trained to make these suggestions was consumed only by US viewer data, suggested things that were relevant to Americans versus rest of the world. Now, let's actually talk about bias sampling. I want to start with a fascinating story from World War II. Engineers were studying bomber planes returning from missions, mapping bullet holes to determine where to actually add the armor. They found that the clusters of damage on the wings and the fuselage and planned to reinforce those exact spots, and you can actually see the image. But they had a massive blind spot. They were only looking at planes that made it back. The truly vulnerable areas were the spots without the bullet hole, because the planes hit there actually never survived and never returned. This survivorship bias is exactly what happens in product research. We survey our active users, talk to our power users, and completely miss the people who have either churned or never converted to being a user. I'll give you a more modern example. A food delivery app by one of our guests actually worked with surveyed users about a premium feature. 70% said that they'd pay more for instant delivery. Drum roll, plot twist. They only surveyed users who ordered during lunch rush in metro areas. You know, they're power users who were already paying a premium prices. So obviously, they wanted it. The reality was that they missed the suburban users, ignored the weekend orders, completely missed occasional users. And guess what? Those groups made a majority of the user base. The fix? Use a segment pyramid, and I'll give you how that works. So you should have 40% of your core users, 30% from your occasional users, 20% should be your new users, and 10% churned users. That means people who've stopped using your app. Yes, please talk to people who've left your product. They're actually the gold mine of insights. The fourth, the small sample size trap. Last, but not definitely least, let's talk about the sample size. I call this the friends and family fallacy. True story, a startup made a massive pivot based on feedback. Wait for it. 8 users. They thought, hey, 7 out of 8 users loved it. That's 87.5% approval. So I'm going to give you my sample size cheat sheet. For qualitative research, please pick minimum at least 5 users per segment. Keep interviewing until you stop hearing new feedback. And that kind of hits around 15 to 20 users total. For quantitative survey, if you have under 10,000 users, survey 10%. If you have anywhere between 10,000 to 100,000 users, minimum 1,000 responses. And if you have over 100,000 users, please use statistical significance calculators. My rule of thumb, if your sample size fits in a coffee shop, it's too small. So what is the Fix-It framework? Time for your rescue plan. I actually call this the game method. G, ground your questions in specific experiences. Instead of, would you use AI features? You should actually ask, tell me about the last time you edited a photo. A, ask for examples. Instead of, do you need better organizational tools? Ask, show me how you organized your last project. The M, monitor actual behavior. Please implement silent tests. This actually is one of my favorite tricks. Before building anything, add a fake gate, like a dummy button. This was actually shared by one of our guests on a recent episode, Ankit Jain from Browser Stack. And he kind of said, they put a fake gate button to decide whether to give rights to different admins. This is how many people actually clicked on it and they wanted the feature, and it's only then they go around and building the feature. What a smart idea I think this is. Please do not overuse the fake gate. It's very important. And E, evaluate patterns, not just numbers. So look for clusters of behavior, not just percentages. One could be you validate it through triangulation. So compare survey data with actual usage metrics. Don't just ask users if they want dark mode. The question is, do they actually use dark mode in other apps? Monitor, do they switch to dark mode when it's available, or they just don't bother? So as always, I want to also share my implementation guide. So here is your rescue plan. First, audit your current research. If you're going to do one, please flag any leading questions, map your participant demographics, and calculate your actual sample size. The next, please rewrite the bias questions. I've given you great examples here. Identify if you're missing user segments. I have called out which are the different user segments, and plan additional data collection. Finally, do a quick validation, like a rapid validation. Run 5 user interviews. If you can, add a fake gate experiment and find a way to compare the results with existing data. So here's your homework. Go audit one piece of user research today. Look for the 4 deadly sins we discussed: leading questions, bias sampling, small sample sizes. Remember, bad data is worse than no data. It's better to know you don't know than to be confidently wrong. So subscribe to my channel for more such in-depth tutorials, exclusive tips on product development. This has been Behind the Feature. Drop me a comment with your biggest research disaster story. We've all got one. I'd love to help you. Until next time, keep building, but verify your data. If you found this helpful, share it with someone who needs it, because good advice deserves good company. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop your thoughts or questions below. I love hearing from you. See you next time. This is Deeksha Anand signing off from Behind the Feature.